Thank you, everyone, for joining the Cardano Summit. And a major initiative of the Cardano Foundation is to support the overall adoption of Cardano. And this does involve the integration with traditional financial markets. So today it's great that we can have a panel discussion on this, which is led by Jonathan from Block Data. So I'll hand it over to Jonathan.
Super. Thanks a lot, Jeremy. Pleasure to be here today and pleasure to be doing this panel with all of these distinguished guests. So that is where this panel is going to be talking about regulated capital and most importantly, how regulated capital is moving into the crypto and blockchain space. And that's where we're going to be touching on the maturing ecosystems and most importantly, again, this inclusion of regulated capital. But before going into this panel, I wanted to explain just a few things for those that aren't familiar with the custody capital market space and remind everybody that blockchain, it forms a new data utility layer that starting as of, around now in 2021 is powering the global economy. Be that through payments with things like cryptocurrencies or be that with permissioned blockchains in industries like supply chain. It really is about building a new data utility. And that is where throughout history, very rarely do we get a technical and a financial revolution happening at the same time. And that's where blockchain is a part of this, in its founding from 2008 or even before, moving through these different phases. And now if you look at the way technology is structured and also how finance relies on technology, we're moving into this point where specifically around blockchain, we're moving into this synergy or this rolling out of the technology throughout financial services as well as throughout companies around the world. And that is where we're now in the midst of one of the biggest asset migrations that I think we'll probably see within the next couple of decades, where the amount of assets that are going to be issued on traditional infrastructure will slowly reduce as that infrastructure that they run on is upgraded to a blockchain-based infrastructure. This is something that we're now starting to see, and the measurement of this might be the total value of the assets that are running on blockchain-based infrastructure. Now, crypto being at $2 trillion roughly at time of this recording, a little bit lower, that's one value. But at the end of the day, the value of the global economy is a lot more than 2 trillion. It's in the hundreds of trillions. And so that is where, and that's what the panel today will be about, is regulated capital. And that is where we're starting to see a maturity of the ecosystem, specifically around custody, which is the first step that any participant in this global economy has to sort out, is who am I going to store my assets with, and most importantly, how am I going to secure my assets? Be that as a retail customer or retail services like PayPal or Revolut providing digital asset custody to their clients, or be that institutional services that are looking to service their institutional or corporate clients. And that is where those are the front-facing solutions. But we also have an entire ecosystem of providers that are building the raw technology that are securing these crypto assets for retail and institutions alike. And this is not all of the companies. There are many more custody providers as well. And so once a corporate or an institution has upgraded to have a custody provider, they are then entering a world where not only can they interface with crypto, but most importantly, they may also be able to interface with blockchain-based financial assets or a replacement or blockchain replacement for traditional capital markets. And as we can see by this market map here, we can see that we're going from, primary asset issuance, so representing financial assets on blockchain systems, to the secondary exchange and also post-trade. And there are many different approaches being taken by different organizations to try and ensure that we can take advantage of the benefits that blockchain brings. And we're still super, super early. So to talk about this in a little more depth, it's my absolute pleasure to introduce the panel that we have today, where we're going to be talking about how regulated capital is adopting crypto assets and hear from the people themselves that are servicing these institutions as they make that migration. So one by one, I'd like to be able to introduce some of the panelists. So from Crypto Finance, we have Stein.
Yeah, thank you, Jonathan. My name is Stein van der Staten. I'm leading the infrastructure business within the Crypto Finance Group, and we provide for financial intermediaries infrastructure so that they can store, interact, or tokenize their assets.
Thank you very much. Richard.
Thank you for being part of this kind of panel. It's great fun to talk to the other key players. So Lykke is foremost a UK exchange that offers its users to trade for free. In addition, we have a Lykke Business where we offer various services for providing blockchain-based trading solutions for incumbents. So that's us.
Super. Thanks a lot, Richard. Pleasure to have you here. Victor from Taurus.
So, hi Jonathan, thanks a lot for having Taurus at this panel. So my name is Victor Busson. I'm leading the marketing and partnership at Taurus. So what Taurus offers is one platform to manage any digital assets, so crypto, tokenized assets, and digital currencies. And to do so, what we built is an end-to-end digital asset infrastructure that will cover the full value chain. So really to your question, to your point, it will be really to power all this blockchain-based market. So from the tokenization to the custody to the API blockchain connectivity, and last but not least, with a regulated marketplace to trade any digital asset, including tokenized securities.
Super. Thanks a lot, Victor. And Marcus from Bitcoin Swiss.
Thanks a lot for having me here today, Jonathan. Bitcoin Swiss is going back to 2013 as a custodian and broker of crypto assets. And I'm the infrastructure guy here, also going back to the year 2000 when I operated distributed database systems. And now it's decentralized databases. And at Bitcoin Swiss, we're building the distributed core banking system for the future.
Great to have you here, Marcus. Jeremy?
Thank you, Jonathan. So at Cardano Foundation, I am the head of partnerships and executive officer. And as head of partnerships, what I look after is the Cardano commercially critical infrastructure list, which is to ensure that Cardano can be supported by all of these market participants and the greater, regulated capital space.
Super, and I guess that's what brings us to here today. So thanks a lot for everyone for introducing themselves. The very first question that I have is, please could you share some key trends that you're seeing in the ecosystem specifically over the last couple of months, and why do you think that this is an important trend? Would anybody like to go first?
Well, I see interoperability as a huge development recently, where Polkadot, as an example, is having a network of chains, and Cardano and the other chains that are out there will fit into the entire ecosystem of different blockchains that will be used by financial market participants. It's hugely complex to build solutions that span different blockchains, and that's the challenge that is going to be faced by most of the market participants. I think it's part of why I'm here. It's solving technical challenges that are difficult but also interesting to solve.
Super, thanks a lot. Richard?
So, professionals don't like to hear that, but just like the crowds, professionals are crowd followers. And what you see is, for a long time, the professionals said, it's not coming, it will never work. And just the price appreciation of some of the cryptos has just been a kind of a go-to action call. So what I see is that at top level, there are some very senior people who are now convinced that this is part of the future. And it's this which we're feeling. And this is why some of the valuations are as high as they are, because they see the potential, but also realize how much work is necessary.
Stein?
Okay, now happened to me as well. Thanks. What we see in the projects that we're having with large institutional financial intermediaries, basically that since a couple of months, they are shying away from Ethereum or looking for alternatives due to the fact that transaction fees on Ethereum are just so high that they see that the projects won't scale, which is extremely important. I might elaborate on later. Secondly, what came up when talking to institutions is basically from a reputational standpoint, the eco footprint of the whole thing, right? So basically proof of work, proof of stake, and really management challenging me on whether this is a reputational risk if they enter into technology that is still on proof of work, which surprised me a little bit in the beginning, but this has come up like since 4 months and is really pressing, and also is a major topic when it comes on to the decision of the underlying technology.
Yeah, sure. So I think that from what we are seeing with our clients, so mainly banks, we are seeing two big trends. The first one, and I think it will echo a bit the point of Steam, is that there is a growing institutional demand for battle-tested proof of stake blockchain protocols. So basically, in this low-interest environment, I think that generating passive yields and new way of generating revenue is quite interesting for them. So I'm thinking, obviously, Cardano, that we just integrated actually within the Taurus Protect, which is our leading custody product. But also there are many other competitors. So as what our colleagues just mentioned, there is really, really more demand that goes beyond Ethereum. And the second big trend, and I think it will echo also the theme of today, is really the asset tokenization and tokenized assets. So digital assets actually go way beyond cryptocurrencies. And there are several opportunities. And basically these opportunities really, we are seeing some actual banks looking to enter the space without touching cryptocurrencies, but really going directly into tokenized assets. And this is something we are seeing more and more today.
Cool. Thanks a lot for sharing. Jeremy, did you want to add anything on?
I mean, the one thing that I would just add here is scalability is a nice term, but it's hard to do. And it's hard to do for a number of factors. Number one is that we have close to 200 active partners that have integrations to Cardano. And as we update a new functionality, so do they. So being a custodian is also a lot of development work to maintain a connection to a blockchain, and including the number of wallet addresses that are holding cryptocurrencies. So when you do have larger volumes, we're continuously pushing on efforts to increase the quality of those components that allow you to interact with the blockchain. It's something that many people don't talk about, but it's critical to ensure that you are built for growth.
I mean, so I'm thrilled that at last we're kind of integrating ADA on our exchange, because a partner, it was always important to do it, but it has taken us so long. But that reflects, I think, a big problem in the whole industry. Just the amount of work required for adoption. And at the end of the day, every business has to be profitable. And if you're not profitable, it will be kicked out. So this is the challenge, is to make it easy for companies to make money in the space.
Yeah, that's fair. Thanks a lot for adding that, Richard. Victor, just double clicking on one of the other things that you mentioned just now about earning passive income. One of the topics that's very, let's say, in the news right now is the SEC's kind of comments towards Coinbase about their Coinbase Lend, and also then Coinbase also publicly kind of, I don't know what the right word is, but going against the SEC. So I'm wondering if each of you maybe have thoughts about how this can affect the future of the industry from the regulation perspective. Victor, would you like? Oh, yeah, Stein, would you like to take that?
Yeah, it's fine with me. When I read the news, I was quite surprised, to be honest, because Gensler announced when he took over that he would take an open stance. From my perspective, Coinbase has been in talks with the SEC in that regard, but with the Lend, and now they get basically shot in the back by by the SEC issuing basically a warning to them. There is not a lot of information around it, but it seems that they did the Hensler test and came to the conclusion that it could be a security, right? And that Coinbase probably didn't do their homework. That's the risk of being regulated. I mean, if you are regulated, you are on the monitor of the financial regulators and you have to play by the rule, and you're the first one where they will point their fingers to if you don't play by the rule, right? I mean, BlockFi offers the same product. They probably don't got issued a warning, but they're not regulated, right? They probably won't get a warning from the SEC. They directly get the warning then from the DOJ. But that's how it is. And I'm too far away of the matter that I could judge on whether Coinbase didn't do their homework properly when in the new business initiative process they might have, and didn't evaluate the regulatory risks of the product properly. But if you're regulated, this is key, because you will be the first one where the regulator is looking at.
I can add a bit also on Steen comments. So at Taurus also we are regulated. So I think I'm just trying to put myself in the shoes also of a regulator. So it's all about finding the right balance, because it's not an easy role, because on the one hand you need to protect really the investor, but on the other hand you try to foster the innovation without killing it. Now probably the tension point is more on the fact that Coinbase apparently was open to talks and has actually talking with the SEC, so it came a bit as a surprise. So that's more where the tension point will be. It's all about making sure that the regulator is transparent in their communication, so that they really empower the industry as a whole. That is the best catalyst that can happen for growth. This is
just a question. Don't we have a fundamental problem here? That the regulator doesn't fully appreciate all the deficits which exist in the traditional financial system. And blockchain technology is a way to address that. And they are just focusing on preventing maluse, but don't see the bigger picture, or it's very hard for the people in the regulatory organization to defend that. So for me, as long as the top regulators don't see this as a big potential of solving the problems, there'll just be one roadblock after another.
That's exactly what we see, right? That Coinbase is the 500-pound gorilla of the crypto space. 100 million clients. The regulators are treating them the same way that they are treating the Goldman Sachs and JP Morgans of the world, right? And for lack of seeing the potential of blockchain, they apply the same measures to new products as they apply to the traditional world. And I'd say, as crypto companies, all of us here, we need to understand there's a benefit in being small and nimble and being able to push out new products quickly, whether regulated or not. And when we grow and when we become the Coinbases, then that's a different position, different size, different importance that we have for the global economy ultimately. And that's a burden or a responsibility that we also have to bear.
I just wanted to ask a little bit of an addition on this, like how, in terms of how the EU countries, including Switzerland, are regulating crypto. Do you see this as a lot more progressive to the kind of SEC approach, or are you basically happy? I think most of you are based in Switzerland and or Europe, so.
Exactly. So that was really the point I wanted to make. I really believe that Switzerland is at the forefront of regulation worldwide. And the reason, like, even tokenized assets is already growing so fast today is because of the FINMA position, because of the CMTA, which is the Capital Market and Technology Association, that contributes to providing frameworks to the industry, like, for instance, the CMTA 20, which is a smart contract template to tokenize the shares of Swiss corporations. So it's like it's a derivative of the ERC20 token, but it's really providing like the guidance to make sure, and the turnkey solution to tokenize, so that one company can tokenize its shares seamlessly. Let's say it that way. So I really believe that Switzerland in this position is really designing part of the regulation that will be cascaded down to the other markets later on. So I think that this Switzerland position is, I think they did really a tremendous job in this area.
Thanks a lot, Victor. So we'll move on to the next question, which I think is around the asset tokenization, and allow each of you to kind of explain where you think where the thinker space is going. So, what is one aspect of the future world that is, let's say, tokenized assets, and what do you think is actually the biggest hurdle for the large rollout of this technology in the traditional financial markets? Stein, would you like to take that?
Yeah, sure. So basically, I mean, we've seen crypto, we've seen some basic asset tokenization. Where I get really excited is we have a couple of projects with multinational banks where we use blockchain technology to improve the operating model. And I think here there lies so many efficiency gains. It is hard, it is slow, because these huge tankers use legacy systems that are not easy to crack. But for example, we have one project that we are now running 2.5 years. We had first live transactions with clients on there. So basically, clients didn't know that was running on a blockchain, but where we had massive improvements in the process, and where even the whole operating model can be opened so that other market participants, other banks can dock on and be part of that product. And I think that gets me really exciting, because first, we bring down the massive costs that all these banks have in their back and mid office. So we cut on that because that's not necessary with the technology that we have on hand. And secondly, there are so many cool opportunities for financial intermediaries to work together and ultimately optimize their risk book. So that gets me really excited. What's the biggest hurdle? I mean, again, we are talking about large financial intermediaries that have quite some risk in the market if they go bust. So they're supervised by the regulator, and they're not working entrepreneurial, right? They are managed, so they are usually risk averse. So the appetite of doing something different or better is there. They have some, but it's taking time. We could move so fast. But on the other hand, of course, they are regulated. They have to go through the whole lawyers. They are operating in a very tight framework. So that is blocking a little bit the massive power that this technology has. But overall, I'm still very excited in that area. I think we will have massive benefits there.
Super. Thanks a lot. Would anybody else like to add anything there?
Sure thing. So I'm excited about all things crypto, ultimately. But what's really exciting most recently is non-fungible tokens and NFTs. And as we look into this as Bitcoin Swiss to offer NFTs to our clients, it's just re-emphasizing one of the biggest challenges that we also see, which is making it easy for developers to build on a blockchain. Stable APIs, clean documentation, up-to-date documentation. It's not all of the blockchain projects do a good enough job in providing developers and adopters of that technology a good and easy way to get started. And that's a key differentiator for people building in blockchain, and it's going to be the key differentiator, I'm convinced as a formal developer myself, in which blockchain is going to make it in the enterprise space. You start with developers, as Microsoft used to call it. In the open source space, for early adopters, for projects. And then you have a large part of the mindset of developers that will extend into the enterprise space automatically.
Obviously, kind of lots of ideas in this space. I think a critical issue is the last mile. And the last mile is, in this context, actually the consumer. Because all big organizations will only really get moving when the user says, look, this is shit, I need this. So what we need is people, organizations which come out of the blue and which just create awesome products which add so much value that the incumbents are forced to move.
Now, to just continue really on the question which is the maturity of asset tokenization. Before going into the hurdle, what we see is that, just to be very specific, so tokenization will be the digitization of the real asset on the blockchain. Okay, so there is this issuance. Today you can issue, the main issuance platform will be Ethereum. You choose your smart contract, so it could be ERC20 or ERC721, like for an NFT or whatsoever, or CMTA20. But you can also, now you have more issuance on Tesos coming in with FA 1.2 and 2.0. And obviously Cardano is about to launch their smart contract platform, so we'll be seeing more and more also tokenization on this platform. But once you issue, after you have the custody, and then last but not least, the exchange. So, and the magic is that today, when it comes to the private assets markets, everything is paper-based. So when it comes to the cap table, for instance, on the issuance, it's on Excel. Okay, so usually you print your Excel, so it's very complicated. The custody is made on, so basically on the custody part, you will have a certificate security, and then on the trading, you have a shared purchase agreement. The magic with the blockchain is that you will be doing the asset tokenization, and you will have directly a digital cap table so that you can see all the different shareholders to who you send and who is the owner of the actual token. Then the asset servicing, because the asset servicing is something critical and quite complex. Because when you talk about asset servicing, it will mean that you need to include also change like corporate actions, proxy voting. And because now the ledger-based security is legal in Switzerland since the Swiss Lex DLT law of February 2021, you no longer need the CSD that you see a bit across Europe, but you will have this unregistered, this registered uncertificated security that is really legally valid. And last but not least, and I think this is the biggest pain point, is that when it comes to the settlement on the blockchain and with the secondary trading, it will be instant. So what used to take weeks now with the blockchain will now take few seconds. And at Taurus, let's say that we are very, very proud to be able to cover the full value chain end to end with our platform. Now, on the hurdle, and I think the catalyst, and I can see this clearly, put in simply, is just regulation. The catalyst in Switzerland, the Swiss Lex DLT law, recognizing distributed ledger-based securities. Now, this law and this type or the equivalent will be probably rolled out to different countries, which will be the trigger for global adoption and this blockchain-based market growth.
Thanks a lot, Victor. Jeremy, do you want to add anything on this one?
Actually, yeah, I do. I wanted to come back to what Marcus was talking about for documentation. From our point of view at Cardano Foundation, documentation means that the blockchain works as you say it does. So when we speak to regulators, it's not just understanding the custodians, but it's how does this blockchain function to begin with? And we are based off of formal specifications at Cardano and a lot of peer-reviewed research. But that information really does need to be captured and explained in all documentation that's given out, so they can understand what they're regulating. And that's often where we come in and have many conversations with regulators to have this more overall education with them. And it's not just on the documentation side, but it's getting some industry standards for vocabulary and what we're talking about. You know, what data needs to be shared for when you're tokenizing an asset, and how do you share that? If it's through a smart contract or if it's through another means, technically, you know, that's another problem. But just agreeing to these type of data sharing standards, I think, is kind of what I've been involved with in the past few months, and I think that is going to continues to be a problem that needs to be overcome in the next year.
We'll get there at some point. Thanks for sharing. So yeah, on to the last question is, you know, we all talk about asset tokenization and the integration and adoption of blockchain technology. But could you share your insights on really, you know, where are the cost savings and things like compliance costs? And how do we really think that this adoption of the technology is actually going to make the financial system in some ways simpler? I'd love to hear some of your thoughts around that.
So, I mean, anyone who ever had to kind of do, you know, administer a company or things, I mean, it's just a nightmare. Boom. Anyone who has to tax receipts, a nightmare. So there is zero doubt about the potential of cost savings beyond any kind of, you know, that's not the question. The problem is, how can you get the standardization and how can you get people to stop talking? Because talk is yet more confusion. So we need real action. And actually, we need a kind of bonfire where, like Wikipedia, it just grows. And this is the challenge, how to get there. And I think the key players have to try and think, how can we create such a platform? If we don't do that, you know, we will continue to talk.
Yeah, sure. So we actually are working several case studies on this area because this is something we really do. So you have different angles to look at it. From a bank perspective and also from an investor perspective and also from a company perspective. On the one hand, you have the rise of digital corporate banking activities, which are really, let's say that when it comes to, you will be saving on the compliance risk department. So basically you will be, as you automatize the value chain, you decrease the time and the tasks and the number of tasks that you need to take and to track all the different information, all the little different requirements. Basically, everything will be coded and automatized. So this is like a huge game changer. From a company perspective, what's quite interesting is that you have obviously a benefit of, as a founder, I unlock the liquidity of the shares. Basically, you unlock the liquidity of ownership. So you give, you really, by tokenizing your share, you can, at any instant, give the right to anyone in the world to purchase what you own. So instead of waiting for an IPO or basically maybe another fundraising, you can really maybe buy a house instantly. If you have like a personal need, you can really act on it. You have also employee incentivization program. So basically to make sure that you motivate your team, you unlock and you can say, okay, I'm going to give some equity of my company to my employees. And this is also in this area and in this growth and of transparency. This is something also quite impactful. Last but not least, also from an investor perspective, what you gave access is that you will have access to a new asset class that is usually previously not accessible, or at least to different, or only accessible to the VC. So you create a brand new ecosystem that is enabling drastic cost saving, meaning everything will become cheaper. You will save time, And basically, we are about to really create efficient private capital market. So basically what we have today on the public market will happen on the private capital market. And yes, so to your question, the list of really benefits and saving are very, very long. And we have like 2 pages of bullet points. The next step would be really to quantify. This is something that has not yet been done, but this is something like that will be worked on.
Cool. Thanks a lot for sharing. Marcus?
Jonathan, you asked about cost savings. And I really think we should be speaking about how easy it is to get started operating a financial business and to scale it to a worldwide financial giant. When we think back 20 years, 25 years, we had the internet that enabled e-commerce through the new worldwide networking, TCP/IP, and it enabled at least 100 times faster creation of businesses than we used to see in the brick and mortar stores. And it also scaled a lot easier to national or global companies. And I expect the same will happen with blockchain in the financial services business, when we have databases including financial assets and business logic embedded in the databases in smart contracts that will enable businesses to create financial service companies much faster than they are able to do today and to scale globally immediately.
Absolutely agree. Maybe to add to that, what Marcus said, but also Richard, I think it's not so much about cost savings. No doubt there will be cost savings down the line. We've seen that already in projects and everybody's aware, but it's much bigger than that. And financial institutions see that. And that's why they also stop talking and are moving, actually. We are talking to and acting to a lot of financial intermediaries that are using blockchain technology. Still very much in the beginning, struggling a little bit, seeing that it doesn't scale because Ethereum gas price is today like $100, and that doesn't work out in a daily business. But we get there. Maybe it will be the new Cardano launch, right? The tokenization on Cardano will be then taking over some of these projects. We get there. It's not so much about cost saving. It is about creating a new way on how we do business, especially in the financial service sector. I think that has a lot of potential.
But maybe one point which we have to keep in mind, I mean, in the internet, you had the Bezos who kind of, think of their energy which they've put in, or what happened at Google. So we need these outliers in terms of how they run their companies, really dedicated in terms of really driving it to make it work. So it, we need twofold: thorough work at one by one, but also these guys who kind of just want to have change at all cost.
Absolutely. I mean, back then we had the Sun Microsystems and the Oracles of the world that built the infrastructure, just like we're building infrastructure for the decentralized finance world. And then there are the people like Jeff Bezos and the Googles that built business models on top of that infrastructure. And 25 years ago, they were already started, but it wasn't clear yet which one of these is going to be the big new business model. And even today, my crystal ball is quite dark in which of the many people building great new things on blockchain are those that are going to be the new Googles or Amazon of the world. Very early stages still.
We should stop and come to an end with a big toast to Cardano and their energy which they have put into building it. And thank you, everyone. I mean, just as one of the partners, what you're doing. Thanks very much.
Absolutely. Big thank you to Cardano team on my side.
I mean, thank you. Thanks to all of you. Adoption is not a one entity, game anymore. Especially with everything with open source blockchain and building applications. So while we do provide the technology, I think we all look for leadership for what will be that new successful business model. And it is a process that does require a lot of cooperation and and communication.
And also, best of luck for everyone for the future adoption.